What is your health worth to you? As the saying goes, health is wealth. The more you invest in it, the more it pays you back. One of the best investments you can make in your health is a membership with our sponsor, Zoe. Over 100,000 people rely on Zoe's personalised nutrition program to make smarter food choices every day. The program starts with at-home tests to help you understand your body's unique responses to food and the good and bad microbes in your gut. I recently got my results and it was enlightening. From your test results, you get a personalised report on what foods work for your body. Then your Zoe app assigns scores to food and meals to help you make the healthiest choices. I am loving Zoe. With my personalised report, I feel empowered to make the smartest food choices for my body. I feel healthier already, and it's only been a matter of weeks. Don't just take my word for it. In a randomised controlled trial, Zoe members who participated in the study saw positive changes to their gut microbiome, waist circumference, and energy levels. So I ask again, what is your health worth to you? Go to zoe.com and take their free quiz to find out what Zoe membership could do for you. Listeners to this podcast can use the code STYLE10 to get 10% off their membership. That's zoe.com. Use the code STYLE10 at checkout. And by the way, as you're clearly a podcast listener, you should go and check out their show, Zoe Science and Nutrition. It's great. Today, I'm going on a style journey with the original princess of punk, the truly extraordinary, iconic, and zany Dame Zandra Rhodes.
It's wonderful to be here, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for coming all this way. I was trying to work out when we very first met, and I reckon it was back in the very late 80s when we were all... it was sort of almost before I'd started my brand. We were all showing our collections at the Ritz for the London collections. And I think I had about 4 pieces. And you were there with your exquisite collection.
Oh, well, we had lots of adventures at the Ritz. It was rather wonderful, really.
It was very British, wasn't it?
And early days, which is also fabulous, thinking about London Fashion Week in that way.
Yes, and now it really has become this juggernaut, and we're talking 40 years in and all the rest of it. But I do think...
It's amazing thinking of 40 years ago.
Yeah. Yes. So despite your being in your mid-80s, you don't seem to be slowing down. You seem to be speeding up. I mean... what are the projects that you're most excited about at the moment?
I've had a wonderful time doing the prints for this Spanish collection called Celia B, which I'm wearing the yellow dress with all the flowers on it today.
Gorgeous.
And
gorgeous.
So that is really mainly mail order, and that was fabulous to do.
And how did that come about? Did you just get approached out of the blue?
I think we'd met Celia, and it seemed such a lovely project because she always put beautiful prints on her dresses, and it seemed a wonderful vehicle to do the printed dresses. And they're so happy, because I think the wonderful thing about prints is they make you feel very happy.
Yeah, they're a feast for the eye, aren't they?
Yes, and... well, they don't sew the marks easily, which is also very good.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. You have dressed everyone from the late Princess of Wales to Freddie Mercury to Diana Ross to Mark Bolan, which I was just thrilled to hear. Is there a story that you may not have talked about before, or not much before? Because I love your story of Freddie Mercury trying on that bridal top and swirling around in it. But I've found myself wondering when I was doing my research, Mark Bolan, now that's quite an interesting one.
Mark Bolan, really and truly, I don't know if you ever knew the exotic Cholita secunda.
Yes.
Well, Cholita was really then the go-between. So she came to me and she said, oh, these would be right for Mark Bolan. And she zipped them off. And so it was only later when I've just seen videos on the screen of him in a very lovely green jersey that I did, that because I never did the fittings for those.
But quite often you don't necessarily meet the person that you're dressing. Has there been one person that you didn't know was buying Zandra Rhodes and you saw a video or saw them on television wearing Zandra?
Well, it's only since, now when all these photographs appear under Getty Images,
Yes.
that suddenly you say, oh, I didn't know that Jackie Kennedy had my one-sided dress. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, my
I didn't
goodness.
fit her. And I think it was her sisters that had got it in New York at Henry Bendel. And there are wonderful pictures of her wearing the one-sided dress that I never fitted her, though.
But do you still have the sample of the one-sided dress?
I still own most of the original samples of all my dresses.
Now, I read this. I mean, 6,000 odd pieces.
We've got around 6,000 pieces,
Zandra,
yes.
that's extraordinary.
We're gradually sorting them out and deciding what homes they should go to. Should they have memorable homes? We want to check that, say, the Victoria and Albert Museum has got one of the special pieces and everything like that before I decide what I'm going to do with the rest of them.
And are they all beautifully archived and with, Jackie O wore this in 1970 or...
Well, I might say she could wear a version of it.
Yes, yes.
They're catalogued. We've sort of they're packed into boxes according to what every 10 years. So I've got things from 1972, 1984. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And do you ever go into those boxes? So you haven't fully sorted them yet?
They're fully sorted, but they're not. But now they're being sorted like we're putting some into a Kerry Taylor auction.
Yeah.
And then I'm working out which ones I think should go to specific homes if they haven't been, specified.
God, how wonderful. Do you ever pull something out of the box or a rail and think, oh, I might give that another go?
I look at it and I think, I must treasure this because I might not have some of them I could never reprint again. Do you know what I mean? Because the screens might have been destroyed.
Yeah.
And they were hand printed in my studio in the day. Now, some of the screens have been donated to different museums across the world, like the NGV in Melbourne and the Powerhouse in Sydney. So I'm making sure that different places and different key museums have got things that relate to the designs.
Oh, how wonderful. Because now we're in a very digitally printed world. Do you still print on screen or do you use digital?
Nowadays, things tend to be digital, but I mean, I've still got all my print works and my silk screens, but we haven't been printing since COVID.
Yeah.
When COVID happened, I was still producing dresses and I made deliveries and then deliveries to people like Liberty and everything like that. And then when COVID happened, there was small print as to why people could return them again. So I ended up with an awful lot of dresses, but that didn't matter because I gradually disposed of them, as it were.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not printing at this stage. Maybe I might do print lessons again, but it's been so busy I haven't had a chance to do that.
Yeah. And there's no way that someone could come to you and say, Zandra, would you please do me this dress or that dress?
I might just have yardage because I do hold some treasured yardage of these things, but and I can make things occasionally.
You famously dressed the late Princess Wales and the Princess Royal. Have you dressed any of this generation of royals?
No, I haven't dressed this generation of royals.
Is there one in particular that you would love to see?
I think it would be lovely to dress Kate. She always looks very elegant. Yeah. It would be fun to do something for her.
What would you do for her?
I think probably a very nice sort of late afternoon dress, because she does look good in her day things rather than being dressed to the teeth. But definitely with a lovely print on it.
Yeah, lovely. Now, your book, My Life in Fashion in 50 Objects, iconic, you have two specific dresses in here. One was a dress that so it's a sketch of a dress that you designed that the Princess Royal wore. Can you tell me a tiny bit about that?
That's a very interesting story in the fact that English Vogue rang me up and said, we're dressing a very famous lady, send in some grand dresses. And I thought it was Elizabeth Taylor. Anyway, I sent this white sort of ball gown with all this lovely net embroidery of seashells. And then a month later, I found out that it was Princess Anne in it. And picture's gorgeous, and everyone thought then that I would do the wedding dress, but I didn't end up doing the wedding dress.
And were you ever approached to produce sketches for the wedding dress?
I did sketches for Princess Diana, but that was when I designed the amazing gold collection, which was gold with the crinolines. But of course I didn't get the dress, but I enjoyed doing those designs.
Now, you mentioned Elizabeth Taylor there. What did you do for her?
I'd never dressed her. I bumped into her at a wedding once, and she said, "I'd love you to make me something." But by that time, she passed away. But she did have some lovely dresses of mine that I saw pictures of and looked gorgeous, which was a very lovely frilly one in rainbow colours.
And then this other dress in your book, iconic, is the one that the late Princess of Wales had.
Well, yes, she had 5 of my dresses, and 3 of them were sold in that huge sale.
Yes.
And the pink off-shoulder one, which I've drawn there, is the one that was put up in the sale in New York. But she announced she was pregnant when she was in Japan with that off-shoulder pink dress.
Gosh, how magical, how magical. I mean, you created your extraordinary fashion and textile museum in Bermondsey. Now, you showcase different designers from around the world and different eras. Is that not correct?
Yes, we've just this second closed our Bieber exhibit that had record figures, and one realises what a wonderful icon Barbara Hulaniki and Bieber is, because it was crowded the whole time. We've had one of my exhibitions probably every 4 or 5 years. We might do a special Zandra Rhodes exhibit,
yes.
But we sort of vary between the different exhibits that we have.
If there was one designer from any era from around the world that you could do an exhibition for, who would that be?
Oh, gosh, that's difficult. I mean, one of the designers that never is remembered with enough credit is someone like Bill Gibb.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, one in Scotland, they're now trying to treasure all the different things he did and the aspects and the clothes he did, mixing the knitwear and the tweeds and everything like that. So I think he's due for another exhibit.
I totally agree. That would be wonderful. Now, today we're going on a personal style journey.
Oh dear.
Don't say that. So I want to start with, how did you decide what you were going to put on this morning?
I felt, well, it was sunny but a bit cold, so I did have to wear a sort of long sleeve sweater under my new yellow frock. But I mean, I always think you should dress up for radio, TV, or wherever, because I think as a designer, you're always representing yourself. And I've always said, when you meet designers and they're not wearing the things they've designed, you think, well, do they believe in them enough if they're not wearing them? You know, so I wear something, I wear all the things that I've designed for.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, you grew up in Kent, and I believe that your mother was a seamstress at the House of Worth. Is that correct?
My mother was a pattern maker in the House of Worth, and she worked there for probably 2 years. So it would have been in the mid-30s before the war started to break out.
Amazing.
And then she came back to Chatham in Kent, where I came from.
And did she teach you how to pattern cut or how to sew indeed?
No, I never thought that I'd be going into sewing. She was this exotic creature that taught in the art college that I eventually went to, but I was always painting and drawing, but we were allowed to see her doing wedding fittings and things like that, which was very exciting for us. We were told we had to sit quietly and not fight with each other, with my sister Beverly.
What was her style like? What was her personal style like?
Well, that was the whole point. She was actually very, very exotic, and she had her hair in a wonderful French pleat, and then she'd pin the front up to a big curl, so that probably made her look taller than she was, and then she'd spray it silver. And then there's one experience that I mention in the book because it comes back to me so vividly, is when we were going to London for the day, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're getting ready to get the bus to the train station, and she sprayed her hair with the silver hairspray, and then she'd always then spray it with setting lotion, and instead of using the setting lotion she used fly spray.
Ouch.
But we didn't know that.
Ouch.
And all the way down to the station she kept saying, "My head does sting, my head does sting." And then we realised that she'd sprayed with the fly spray. And so we went into a chemist, and she went, "You may think I'm stupid, but the chemist said, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're either going to have to go home and wash it all off, or you'll have to live with that."
Suffer.
So we lived with it while we went up to London.
Suffer for beauty. Do you remember the first moment that clothes, you put something on and it had an impact on you? You felt differently?
Gosh, Sharon, I felt differently. I mean, well, I used to. She used to have wonderful dress shows. And of course, as children at the age of like me, 10, and my sister probably 7, we'd have clothes made for us so we could model down the
As
catwalk.
little ones?
Little, because there was a children's section. Oh. So I had a lovely dress with flowers at the sleeves, and I think it was probably a loose pinafore type dress, and I loved dressing up, but then I'd go and see my grandmother on Sunday mornings, and I'd have to run through the park because the children would all make fun of me because of what I looked like. But I'd still wear it, and I still liked it.
And it still made you feel good?
And it still made me feel good.
Oh, how fabulous. Did you wear a school uniform?
I had a school uniform. And I was very unrebellious, boring child.
I was going to say, did you customise it?
No, I didn't mind at all. I just wore the old tie, and I thought of that as something you wear and it didn't matter what happened to it. Whereas if I was dressed up, I'd have to bother about my clothes. Whereas when I was at school, it didn't matter if you spilt things on it or anything like that.
When was your light bulb moment in terms of fashion? I mean, you were known as the Princess of Punk originally when you burst onto the fashion scene.
Well, a bit later
60s.
That was, because when I burst onto the fashion scene, I was first with Sylvia Ayton, and we had the Fulham Road clothes shop.
Yeah.
And I was doing pop-art prints that no one had, like lipsticks and little men on them and things like that.
I mean, that's so ahead of its time.
Which didn't particularly sell well. So it was sort of, I suppose, a cult shop, and it was in the wrong place in the Fulham Road. So that closed. And then I even remember doing an interview when I was doing a teaching job, and they said, "Well, what are you going to do now that your life's failed?" And you say, "Well, I suppose underneath I thought, I'm just going to pick up the pieces and start again."
Wow. So you had your Sylvia Ayton time, and then you went on to where?
Well, Sylvia got offered a job at Wallace Shops, where she became head designer till she retired. And but I was left thinking, I've got to teach 2 days a week, and I'd met these mad Ukrainian models, and they said, "Zandra, you're going to make a fortune. Come to America. We'll find someone that will back you." So I thought, well, America doesn't know that I'm really a textile designer, and so I got friends to show me how to make things, and I made exotic kaftans and the yellow coat that you always think of and everything, and I cut them out, got a machinist, she made them, and then I did all the finishing with the beads and everything, and took them to America.
And was that when you felt like you really sort of created the Zandra Rhodes style, the sort of the iconic
I
style?
suppose it was the beginning of my iconic style, but I had the headscarf and my red curls drawn on my face, but my hair was still brown then. And I wore high beaver boots, and I had a letter of introduction from English Vogue to Diana Vreeland in New York. And so I went with the clothes over my arm.
And what did you wear to go and meet Diana
I had my
Vreeland?
white beaver boots, my flowing chiffon headscarf, and flowing chiffon dress with white silk sort of blouson pants in that.
Tucked into your boots?
Tucked into the boots.
Oh, how chic.
And so then I went, and my eyes would have been fully made up with false eyelashes. And I went in with my clothes, and she completely raved about them. And she was amazing herself with this wonderful dyed black hair and shaded red at the edge with rouge. And she said, "Oh, they're wonderful, they're marvellous. I'm going to put them on Natalie Wood and we're going to photograph them." And then she picked up the phone and phoned Henry Bendel and said they had to carry them. And so they were the shop windows in New York City.
Wow.
In the sort of like late 60s. And so suddenly I had wonderful people, all Baby Jane Holzer and things, all coming to my funny little workroom in London.
But how wonderful, because sometimes I think with fashion, if you take yourself or your collection to a new market, there are no preconceptions.
And I think that's what it must have been.
Yeah.
By chance.
Yeah. I love that. How did you come up with the whole beading on the edges? That lovely, I always think of it as almost sort of like almost a tassel of a bead suspended from your hems.
Probably because I was so involved in the handwork and I wasn't doing the machining, but it gradually grew doing all those different bits like feathers on the end. That was influenced by going to the Museum for the American Indian in New York and suddenly doing designs with feathers and everything. So it was quite wonderful, and quite sometimes I'm open-mouthed at the fact that it sort of caught on in such an amazing way.
Well, because it was good, perhaps.
Or different for that time, because basically I was a print designer finding a vehicle for my prints.
But I think of you as sort of really the original sort of queen of boho, albeit very glam boho, but there's something slightly boho about your approach
very
to
early on
design. And your prints, actually, your original prints were sort of, delicate, and there was a sort of
And I used to print them all too. Yeah. We'd be printing them all in our little print room.
Probably without rubber gloves. The hands stained.
No rubber gloves. No. Something short of desirable if you look closely on me.
I often talk about clothes being our armour, and that we message through them. Is that something that you're conscious of doing?
I think probably. I mean, all of us have various suits of armour that we can hide behind. I hide behind both the makeup, and I always feel very much as a designer, you're representing yourself. So I'm wearing everything I design.
And the makeup and the hair, when did that start to evolve? How old were you when you started to really create this sort of very iconic look?
I would say probably from the very late 60s. And after that, experimenting. Some of the experiments were something to be desired. And some were cross-references with going into Andy Warhol's factory. And then, one of the girls had 2 dots and I ended up with 2 fluorescent green dots instead of eyebrows, and different looks that one's had. And sometimes I think, those were strange, but I enjoyed doing it.
Those must have been extraordinary times.
When I look back, they're extraordinary, but I didn't think about it at the time. I was going along with the flow
Yeah.
of something amazing.
Yeah. You've just recently released this lovely book, iconic, and it's Zandra Rhodes, My Life and Fashion in 50 Objects. If I were to ask you which was the most iconic piece that you've ever worn,
What I do find strange is one goes back to the beginning of your career, because I still adore my yellow felt coat,
Yeah.
which had all the beads and everything on it. I've had other ones, but that was sort of like not hippie, but early statement pieces.
an extraordinary piece.
Yes.
Where is that coat now?
Oh well, there was one shown in the Met last year.
Amazing.
There's definitely one up in Scotland, in Edinburgh. I've got one. I have almost one of all my favourite old pieces that I still keep. Unfortunately, the ones that I keep aren't always good to look at too closely, because I would have worn them.
They've been lived and loved.
They've been lived and loved. I love that.
If you weren't wearing top to toe Zandra, who do you think you would wear?
I'd probably go for antique pieces. Do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, I do have a wonderful Issey Miyake body. You know, those wonderful fitted bodices. I wouldn't be able to squeeze my body into them now, but it's a signed one that he gave me as a gift one time that I did wear with pleated skirts, and it looked rather wonderful.
Extraordinary. Where do you get your style inspiration from?
Often it's me experimenting with the prints that I'm going to do, and trying to think, what way would I like the prints to now look? And then the print leads me into something new.
And where do you get your print inspiration from?
I carry a sketchbook, and if I go on a trip anywhere, whether it's the countryside in London, or I might be on a trip in, I don't know, let's say if I'm lucky enough to be in Italy, I would probably draw something, whether it's in a church, whether it's a tree, and that would be something that I'll link onto, you know, whether to do some designs with.
And do you refer back to very old sketchbooks at all?
Yes. Now, when I run out of ideas, or when we're thinking we need to do a new theme, I probably will flick through a pile. I've got probably about 70 books.
Have you got one on you now?
And no, I haven't got one with me now. I was so excited to come. No, but I mean, I'll refer back, and we might find a tree, or a drawing of a lily, or a drawing of a flower that will lead you to an idea that you can follow up on.
Do you have a co-creative, someone that you bounce ideas off?
For an ideal holiday trip, I would go away with someone like Andrew Logan, whose jewellery I wear, and we'd go on a creative trip, like we went on a trip to Morocco, and we'd be up at 5 o'clock in the morning drawing the sunrise over a desert, or looking at carvings, or going to museums. So the ideas would come from all the places like that.
Yeah. The fashion world has changed so seismically over the decades that you've been creating. What do you think is the best bit of that?
Here in UK, we have to think very carefully, because I think that due to probably when both you and I started, the world was our oyster. And I think because the whole of Europe had opened up, I think it was a wonderful opening up, and a being able to exchange ideas and take things abroad. And we were having buyers from Europe and America coming in and buying our clothes. And that has all changed now, because the gates have come down, and we're now forced to be again a tiny island with not many possibilities. I find it a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect you or I in the same way,
Yeah.
but it affects our youth.
Yeah. Yes, it does. It does. And you have these mega brands, And I'd love to understand your view on these mega brands that are now charging thousands and thousands of pounds for a handbag, for example.
It's quite appalling, really, I think. And I've got a feeling what might happen, because we're now back to being a small island, we might find a really whole wave of different kind of originality, and the fact that we should be doing more of, with the situation, not wasting so much in the world. It should be that you do some make, do, amend, and we find that we put new with old, and we come up with totally new styles, that we're not using up the facilities of the world anymore.
I would hope so. And it feels like we are heading in that direction. And as Brits, we're very creative and very entrepreneurial.
The British are very creative and very entrepreneurial, and I think we're going to have to rely on that to see what happens to us.
I agree. Do you have a style icon? Or are you the icon?
Well, that's very grand. If I start to think that, I think my head would go too big. I mean, I have to rely on my initiative to come up and hope that I can come up with different things. I mean, I think most of my close friends are fairly iconic in themselves or represent things. You know, I went to a wonderful opening of a new museum for modern art in London last night. And I was thinking that Dougie Field's artists that I've collected for years should be in there. So I think that we're creatives, and we have to hope that there's going to be a vehicle for spreading our work around the world now.
How would you want someone to describe your style DNA in 3 words?
Colourful, original, maximalist.
Love that. Love that. What would you say is the sexiest look on a woman?
I think sex comes from an allure of the personality rather than what you show. I think so. It could be someone's eyes are quite marvellous. I mean, I sometimes wonder at how short skirts are now, which I wouldn't dare to wear anything without trousers. But that puts me into my age group anyway.
But yes, I agree with you about the allure. Would you say that your style has changed through the decades?
Well, if my style didn't change with the decades, I think that would be very worrying too, because you'd be then probably, putting yourself into a spot. I suppose the fact that I've still got pink hair is, maybe you could say, that's run of the mill. You know what I mean? And that hasn't changed, but the cut changes. I mean, because you've
Who
always...
cuts it?
Oh, I've got a lovely Swedish hairdresser who worked on my... he did my... Linus, who worked on the wigs for my Blenheim show.
Yeah.
And did the wigs. And so, I mean, he's been now cutting my hair and making me feel okay. So that makes a difference.
So what does stay-at-home, chill-out Zandra wear?
Trousers and a Zandra Rhodes printed top, but very casual, or sometimes even a dungaree suit if I'm doing the plants on the balcony.
And trousers are from where?
Funnily enough, the pleated trousers are by a wonderful girl, Kitty Joseph, that used to work in my studio before COVID. And so the trousers are so easy, they're washable, and they go through it. So it's very easy.
And is that a sort of fairly constant look for you, the pleated trousers under one of your tops or dresses?
Under one of my tops or dresses, yes.
Would you say you've had a worst fashion moment?
It's often when... I think the worst fashion moments were when fashions were either a bit shorter or whatever, and you look at yourself and you think, that was a really fatal look.
I've never heard it talked about, a fatal look. But could you describe that look?
I mean, I've never had lovely long legs, and you know when things were once short. I mean, now having discovered I can wear things as tunics and then wear flowing trousers, it makes it much easier.
Let's talk about planning. Do you plan your wardrobe at all?
I don't really plan my wardrobe at all. I don't think I work out what the weather's like. Then it might be what's my newest project, and then obviously. I'm a firm believer as a designer that if you design something, you're designing something that you would represent, and therefore you don't say, sorry, I don't wear that. I might not wear a particular colourway, but you still wear it because you're telling other people this is what you believe in. And if you believe in it, then...
You should be in it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about travel for a moment. Are you particularly aware of what your airport or your travel look is going to be?
Well, vaguely, if I'm travelling on a long trip, I'll have packed the night before and then I'll decide what I'm wearing, which again is usually the pleated trousers and a printed Zandra Rhodes top with a suitable vest if it's likely to get cold, and maybe an easy jacket that doesn't crease up too much, but usually is a bright colour.
Are you a good packer or a bad packer?
I think I'm a good packer. I pack very neatly. Very neatly.
What luggage do you use?
Oh, a bright colour. So it comes from any old shop, but if it's a nice bright colour and efficient wheels, and always a strap. Never travel without a strap, because once when I was travelling in China, my luggage came down the chute and it had fallen open, and then I had to travel tied with string.
What, if anything, do you feel you've got an excessive amount of in your wardrobe?
It used to be shoes, because you think I'd need this high-heeled shoe for this, and I need this, special shoe for that. I had a lovely pair of iridescent mauve frisons, and things like that.
Oh my God, I used to love mauve frisons.
And they were wearable. They weren't too high.
Yeah.
But now, unfortunately, I can only wear flat shoes, so usually it would be a choice of different kinds of sneakers that I wear.
I'm fascinated to know, in terms of percentages, how does your wardrobe break down in terms of colour?
Pink, yellow.
Do you ever wear black?
No. I was once given the task of wearing black for a week. I think it was the Daily Mail. And I found that so difficult. It made me feel very depressed. And people are under the illusion that if you wear black, it doesn't show the dirt. But it shows dirt just the same as if it was white or another colour.
Yeah. Now, what is your approach to sustainable fashion?
The world has got to think clearly that you cannot change your wardrobe with every season. I think we have to think constructively that we can mix and add. So it doesn't mean that you're always going... I mean, I wouldn't like people to say, oh, here she comes again, she's wearing the same thing. But you can put enough variety into it that you can wear something old and something new, something borrowed, whatever, and you can get your look to change with the seasons, but not necessarily always buy new. I don't think there are enough facilities in the world now to just change a wardrobe all the time.
I mean, there's not enough resources, are
That's
there?
it. You'd use up the resources, I think.
Yeah. What do you do with your clothes when you've had enough of them?
I tend to do what I did with the rest of my collection, put them in a box, and then suddenly, which is quite nice, you get a box out that you haven't worn for 20 years and you see a raincoat like I got out of purple. And I thought, oh, I could still wear that purple raincoat with my new black beret from Stephen Jones with the Eiffel Tower on it, and it looked perfect. And it was an old raincoat, so that, you just see... Look with initiative.
What would you say is the oldest piece in your wardrobe?
I've still got some pieces from the Fulham Road clothes shop, which would mean they're from about 1965.
And do you still wear them?
Oh, no. Their size, and also sizes smaller. So, I wouldn't put, oh no, if I'm wearing it, it's got to be loose. I don't like to say that I'm a 14, but... They have to be loose enough for me to wear.
Comfort is king.
Comfort is king, yes.
Yeah.
Disguised comfort.
No. Comfort makes you feel good. Let's spin on to some quick-fire questions. What fashion advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Fashion changes all the time. I think you just have to look at it and say, what do I feel good in? Really?
Yeah. Which fashion trend or era would you most like to see make a comeback?
Well, I'm quite enjoying boho, which gives me all the stuff that I did, the flowy chiffon tops and things that I still think that keep coming up in eBay and everything.
Yeah. What fashion or beauty trend would you consign to room 101?
Tattoos.
Your last impulse buy?
Can't think if I had an impulse buy. I'm so boring, aren't I?
Don't worry, we'll move on. Grooming or well-being treatment you couldn't give up?
Having my hair cut beautifully.
High-end or high street?
It's always nice looking at high end. Doesn't mean you'll buy it, but you look at high end.
Trend or style?
Style.
Colour or monochrome?
Colour.
Plain or pattern?
Pattern.
Hoarder or editor?
Hoarder.
Charity shop or resale?
Charity shop.
Shapewear or lingerie?
I used to love lingerie. I think I'm too old for that.
Bikini or one piece?
Oh, one piece.
And finally, at the end of the day, what do you or don't you wear in bed?
Pyjamas.
And your makeup.
Oh, and my makeup. Wonderful. Yes.
Zandra, thank you so much. What a lovely conversation with an icon, an absolute icon.
It's been wonderful being here with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.